everybody, welcome to Winsome Cottage Garden. My name is Hannah and I'm so glad that you decided to join me today. We are back in the kitchen starting flower seeds today. I mentioned in the last seed starting video where we did our tomatoes and peppers that I had a whole host of flower plants to get started. And if you can tell from the setup behind me, there is a lot that we're gonna get planted. Now I'm still within the recommended window for all of these plants. My frost date, my last known frost date that isn't till the end of May. Some of these will go out a little before that. Today I'm starting all of the 6 to 8 week varieties as well as a couple 4 to 6 week varieties. I'm typically a type of person who likes to start seeds as soon as my window opens, but this year time's gotten a little away from me. Not to worry, if you're like me and you're a little bit behind, there is still time to get seeds started, especially because this spring seems to be, in a lot of areas of the country, a little bit slower than normal. So there's lots of times to get things started, and even if they're a little smaller when you put them out, it's still better to get the clock going by getting the seeds in the soil and starting to germinate than wait. So there are a lot of different types of flowers that we're going to be starting today. Mostly it's going to be cosmos, celosia, marigolds, and a handful of other things. I'm going to go ahead and get everything started, and then afterwards we'll talk the varieties and why I chose those particular varieties, if they're new to me or if they're an old favorite. It's a little bit late. It's about 8:45. I intended to start this project much earlier, but like many things, you get home from work, you have to do dinner, you have to do this, that, and the other thing, and the next thing you know, this is the time that I have to get this done. So my goal is to get everything sown within an hour. You'll see this really quickly. We'll see how close I can get to getting that done. So without further ado, let's get some seeds started. Well, that took a heck of a lot longer than I thought it would. It took about 3 hours. And it's like 11:20. So I have some stuff I need to do before I go to bed. So we'll pick this up tomorrow and I will share more about my varieties then. Before I sign off for the night though, this is what everything looks like. Molly is helping me. These need light to germinate, the rest do not. And then these aren't fully set up, but they don't need light just yet. I did want to note, these are the Chinese forget-me-nots, and they need complete darkness to germinate, which is why I've got that like that. It is now a new day. As you can see, we've had to shift location. We are now back at the cottage. We're going to be working on some projects. So the next couple videos you see will be up here, and I'm excited to get this garden spick and span for spring. But I wanted to finish that last video that I kind of finished the seeds and ran. Finished the seeds and went to bed is more accurate. I thought I'd go over the varieties that I planted, kind of share a little bit more about why I chose various things. But before I do that, I wanted to share with you one thing that is super exciting. Okay, so the setup is not my usual setup. Because we are at the cottage, I only brought the seeds up that I thought would germinate while I was away. Not everything has germinated yet, but you can see so many little babies in here. I'm just so excited. Now our peppers are still, you know, not quite ready. What I think I might do is rearrange things so the peppers on the edge of the mat and move these things over, because most of the tomatoes are up, as you can see, but I don't think I've seen one pepper yet. So we'll put those guys over here and move everything else. The brassicas are all good to go. I am so excited. I try not to haul stuff back and forth between here and home, but these I knew would germinate while I was up here, so I did bring those up. I thought they were going to germinate in a couple more days, so it would only be a day or two that they'd just be poking out of the ground. So I didn't bring any lights with me. But luckily, Molly had some lights that I'm gonna jerry rig, as you saw here, just to get this through. And then when I go home, it will be under a regular grow light schedule. So I just am so excited. Happy birthday, little plants. Welcome to the world. I can't wait for all the tomatoes and lettuce that you bring me. And the peppers will be on their way soon. I just love that. The first seed, I literally was surprised by them because I checked, but not like a ton. And so when I found them this morning, I think I literally squealed because I'm so excited. But let me quick rearrange them and show you what I'm doing. When things germinate, you want to remove the heat pad. The plants don't really need it. It's just to help speed the germination process. But since none of my peppers have germinated, I'm just going to, again, move them to one side and have the heat concentrated. I'm also going to keep the humidity dome on until tomorrow, though you'll see in just a second that this dome has like a little valve, for lack of a better word, that I've opened, so it's not as humid as it had been. But I do want to create the right conditions for the peppers to still germinate while not damaging any of the other plants that are in there. So let me quick rearrange this, and then we'll get more into the seed varieties that we planted earlier. So this is that little valve thing that normally I have it closed, and I'll probably close it at night, but I just have it open right now. I'll probably leave this humidity dome on, as I said, until tomorrow. And then when I take it off, I'll give it a spritz and just make sure I'm monitoring its moisture levels. I might leave it on a little bit longer, but I'm so excited. Welcome to the world's little tomatoes. What I did is as you can see, shifted the heat mat so it's just covering this half of the tray. And there's the 4 peppers, as well as I picked 2 tomatoes that didn't have many germinated under them. That should really give it a little bit more time in the incubator in a condition that it likes. And then I'll pull it as soon as I start seeing a pepper or 2 pop. I'll pull the heat mat off. All right, so let's talk about the different flower varieties I planted. This time I was planting both the 6 to 8 week varieties as well as the 4 to 6 week varieties, mostly because I'm about right at the 6 week mark. A little bit early for the 4 to 6 week, but if it's possible I'll get them outside a little bit early and so that extra time will serve them well. Most of the things I planted were a 72 count tray. There's one 50 count tray I planted, and then I also planted some smaller trays from Gardener Supply Company that were probably about 12 or 16 cells. I can't remember quite exactly off the top of my head, but thereabouts. So they were a half size one. So if you saw me doing that, those are ones that I just needed a few of. I tend to overplant, especially on some of the types of flowers that are my favorite, where I wanted a ton of different varieties. Now, these will be used in my city garden primarily. That's where I do the bulk of my cut flower growing. I'll also sneak a couple into the garden beds here at the cottage, especially zinnias once we get those done. And dahlias will come up here as well. And then I'll see if I have any left over. I'll see if any friends or family want them. I planted a flat and a half of marigolds. I bought these just at Lowe's. In the past, I've been a little bit more picky about the varieties that I've planted, but you can't really mess up marigolds, and I wanted just some dwarf varieties that had a mix of colors. I plant marigolds as companion plants around my vegetables. I've been told, and I think it's true, that they help keep like certain rabbits and things like that away. Sometimes they deter bugs because they have a very distinct smell. So I always companion plant them. They're also very cheery, so I like that too. I did an entire 72 count tray of the French double dwarf mix. They get about 8 inches tall, so they're one of my favorite sized plants. So I'm not sure exactly what they look like. I'm going to Google it and stick a picture up here because I bought this there and it's got this picture. And then I also planted some champion mix, and it has the exact same picture. And I'm assuming they look a little bit different. Though the big difference is this grows about 8 inches tall and this grows about 15 inches tall. So I did half a 72 count tray of the champion mix. I also did half a 72 count tray of the Bolero Dwarf, which is like a really pretty red and yellow mixed one. Marigolds, I feel like I'll probably end up buying some as well. You can't really have too many. You'll always find spots for them. So the other thing that I planted a large number of was alyssum. It's another thing that I like to companion plant, mostly around like tomatoes and peppers, because one thing that's really cool about alyssum, its roots don't compete for resources like some other plants do. So it will grow around existing roots, and it's just kind of a carpet that helps cut down on weed pressure. So I've never grown my own alyssum. I usually just buy them, but I thought this year might be kind of fun to see if it made any difference. And so what I ended up doing was probably about 24 of the pastel carpet mix. Again, these are ones I also just bought at Lowe's because I thought it was worth experimenting, and they were $1.99 and I was there. So pastel carpet mix, alyssum, these are all fairy morse seeds. I've never grown them before, so I can review them at the end of the year. I did a royal carpet mix, which is just primarily purple. I did a carpet of snow, which is your straight white. And then I did a rosy O'Day. All of those were about a third of a 72 count. So that's 24. I think that's 24. The next thing I did the most of was Cosmos and Celosia. So for Cosmos, I think I probably planted about 60 plants. And I should add that for each of these varieties, I'll put 2 to 3 seeds. Sometimes if they're itty bitty, they get more. In each cell, so I know I get at least one plant from the cell. Once they pop up, if for some reason the germination was poor and I have some cells that don't have any, I'll usually go to a cell that I had more than one plant pop up and then move it over so that I get the number I want. So most of these seeds came from Johnny's, I think all but one. So I bought the double click mix, which is one of my favorites. So I think I did the most of this. I ended up doing 12 of this. Then I did 6 Sensation Mix, 6 Cupcakes Blush, 6 Xenia. It's Xsenia. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that. And then I did a double click bicolor violet, and I bought from Florette Flower a bicolor rose. I've had really poor germination with this in the past, so I really loaded up the seeds, and if it doesn't germinate well, I'm probably going to get rid of these seeds. And then I also did a Rubenza, which is a really like magenta colored Cosmos. Cosmos are really one of my favorite cut flowers. They don't have an awfully long vase life, but They add just such a air of whimsy to a bouquet, like with those big, beautiful flowers and those like really pretty greenery. In some ways, they're a nice greenery filler because they're very fern-like, just as much as the flowers are great. So I have a whole section that I've planted cosmos for a number of years that I kind of turned into a field around things, and I'm planning to do that again. I actually also bought 2 more seeds. I told you I only didn't buy many seeds this year. Well, I realized I forgot 2 different kinds of seeds that I could only buy from Baker Creek, so I bought those, and while I was there, I was looking at some other things, so I picked up a couple more seeds. But they're not here yet, so that'll be another video where I plant them. The other thing that I planted a large number of was celosia. Celosia is another one that I love having it in cut flowers. Last year was the first year I'd grown it. I don't really know why. I think I was told they were hard to grow, or I had that impression for some reason. They're not. If you're thinking about it, do it. They're hugely productive, and they're such great filler plants, but then also you can make them the focal point. And there's a huge range of what they look like. The one thing about them is you really need to cut on them, otherwise they'll develop like a center stalk with a giant flower that is in a lot of ways unusable because the stem itself gets huge. So I have a mix of them, and I ended up planting a large number. I had planted 8 types of cosmos, and I planted 10 types of celosia. One of the ones I did plant last year, which I'm planting again this year, is the Sunday Wine Red Celosia. This is unusual because its foliage is like that red color as well as its flower. Really loved this. It's particularly good in fall bouquets, but even summer bouquets, it adds a different look because its foliage is so beautiful. Selway White Celosia is another one I planted last year. It's like a smaller spiked one. This year I'm trying a terracotta. I don't know if it was Garden Answer or You Can't Eat the Grass. One of them, this is one of their favorite ones. And I'm not a huge brownish, brownie flowered person, but this is one that I thought, you know what, I want to try because I love unusual plants. So Selway Terracotta, we'll see how that goes. I bought a flamingo feather mix, really pretty like light pinky, a flamingo purple, which is a darker one, and I think its foliage might be a little bit darker than typical, so I'm excited about that as well. Pompless Plume, I honestly just purchased because it was on sale, and it had a mix of different colors. They looked larger than some of the Selway varieties. I don't know if that's because the plant in the picture that I saw was just allowed to grow a little bit bigger, but it looked really cool, and I can't wait to try it. A Kramer's Lemon Lime Celosia. This is a different style. Instead of the like plumey, like it was not quite brain, because I have some that I think really look like brains. This is, I think I would say, more like corally, like a squiggly line. And this was like a lemony lime colored one that I thought was really pretty and would go well in lots of different color combinations. Crystal Beauty, I can't quite remember off the top of my head what this one looks like. I think it is another one of those squiggle ones, if I'm remembering correctly, but it's like more of a pinky. And then these are the 2 that I call brains. They're both chief varieties because they form like round ones that are squigglies all together. So it literally looks like little itty bitty brains. But I saw a picture and I thought that looks kind of cool. I want to try it. And then I saw them in person last year, and they were just so much better than their pictures because I don't know about you, but when I think brains, I don't think flower arrangements. But it really just added a spot of intense color and a really beautiful, unusual flower structure. They still look like brains, but you don't see them and think brains. You just think, wow, that's really cool. So last year I grew the Chief Carmine one, which is a really deep red, and this year I bought the Persimmon, which is more of a like pinky magenta-y red. I'm interested to see how alike they are, and then if they're very similar, just decide which one I like better. So that is the celosia. Other filler flowers I should mention, the 50 count tray I planted was all of Snapdragon. What I ended up planting was actually seeds I saved myself. I picked the colors I liked the most. It's just a mix of Snapdragons that I've picked over the years. These, it says 2020, but I added more to it. So I think I harvested these, and these might be from 2021. But yeah, we'll get a lot of babies. 50 count is more than what I'll need. Another filler flower that I planted was Status. This is one that I planted a 72 count tray. I absolutely love Status. On its own, does it make a huge impact? but once you add it into bouquets, it adds an intense little color splash here and there that you can repeat, and it really holds its own in its base life. It dries beautifully, so it could really last forever. It just dries in an intense color. I think I said in a different video when I purchased this Pacific Mix seeds from Baker Creek, I had a plant last year that was a yellow status, that it was in a pot I forgot to empty out, and I enjoyed it all winter. It was like yellow all winter, so I'll just have to make note to leave them. I think I pulled the ones last year in the fall, and I think I'm gonna leave them for fall, winter interest this year. So I did a whole 72 count tray. A Seeker mix, I did half the 72 count tray. This is just the variety I grew last year, which is a mix from Johnny's that I really liked. And then, as I said, the Pacific mix from Baker Creek. I went to rebuy this one and I did it too late and they were sold out. So we're trying something new this year and we'll see what the colors look like. And then we're getting into some of the trays that I did a smaller amount for. One of the smaller trays of Chinese forget-me-nots. These I bought from Flora a number of years ago and they are so pretty. One of the things I learned this past year is I want to plant these in areas that my dogs cannot access, because if I let them go to seed, they turn into like little burrs, and I was pulling them out of my dogs way too much. So they're going to be going actually in the vegetable garden, which my dogs only have access to when I am in there. And I did 12 blue and 12 pink, which is going to be really fun. This was the variety, I think I did pause and show you that they need complete darkness to germinate. So how I do that is I ended up taking another one of the trays that the cells sit in and popping it on top, so you couldn't see anything. So those are favorites. I also did some Dusty Miller, which is a really pretty silvery foliage filler that I like, and some Crispedia, which are those little golden balls on sticks, which they're just so cheerful. I love adding them to the bouquets. I was a little late in starting these. I almost didn't, because I probably should have started them about a month ago, but I decided to do it anyway. We'll see what happens. Worst case scenario, I don't get any flowers, but I think I might. Black Eyed Susan Cherry Brandy. I have both here at the cottage and back in the city. I had a couple of plants that these are supposed to be annuals, and they've been going a couple years. So that's why I started them, actually, because I thought, you know what, even if I don't get blooms in this hat, I'm going to put them in a little bit more protected areas to see if they can winter over more. And they're just so beautiful. They have such a rich red color. I love them. The last thing that I did end up planting was some more lettuce starts. I'm starting them inside and we'll be moving them out fairly soon, because they can actually handle some cold weather. And on my driveway, 2 of the raised beds have heat cables. So I was going to plant some ranunculus and anemones in there. I think I'll do that in one of them, and in the other I'll plant lettuce. So I did some kale, 3 varieties of kale. Ragged Jack is a favorite, Scotch Blue, and then some Dino kale. Then I also did some mustard greens, which we love in salads, as well as some butter lettuce and a Rocky Top lettuce mix from Baker Creek. So between the Salanova and the cabbage that I already started, as well as this, that will really take care of my spring lettuce. I'll have to do some more that I'll plant in place as a succession plant, but in general, that'll keep me going for a couple of months. Those are all the varieties of flowering seeds I planted this year. I still have some more to go that need to be planted a little bit closer to my frost date. Specifically, I've got a ton of zinnias that need to be planted then, as well as some sunflowers, which I do start inside. You can technically do sunflowers out in place. They probably like that a tiny bit better. But I deal with squirrels and chipmunks, and so if the seed doesn't get eaten, the top of the plant does. So I like to start them inside, get them a little bit bigger when they kind of leave them alone, and they'll have a chance to grow. So that's, where I am. You saw before I left that they took up a lot of growing racks. They'll take up even more when we go and up pot some of them. I don't need to up pot a lot of them. Most of them will stay in these smaller trays, but a few of them will. So thanks for joining me. I can't wait to show you. I'll be going back home in a couple days, and I won't be, well, actually I'll be home by the time you see this, and I will not be surprised if I have a couple seedlings popping up. So we'll get to discover how many of them have germinated together, which is always one of my favorite things, is to check and see what the babies are doing. So if you like this video, please make sure to subscribe, and we can watch the garden grow together, both at the garden in the city as well as at the cottage where I am now. We're going to be doing some spring cleanup again in the next couple of videos, as well as taking after some of that pesky Houtunia ground cover that I've spent a lot of time last year talking about how we were trying to eradicate it. So I'll link a video from last year before where we spent some time redefining our garden beds. We're going to do some refining of them again this year, as well as just the next video we're doing is just general spring cleanup as we prepare for the 2023 growing season. So thanks again for joining me today, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Bye-bye.